What the hell is going on at Warehouse 6? Yusuf Harlan muttered, his thumb frozen on the pause button of the security footage. He was in his office on the top floor of the headquarters, the morning sun barely cutting through the tinted glass behind him. Yusuf stared at the paused frame on the screen where a pallet of boxes lay tipped over, a worker limping away from it while two others stood nearby not helping, just laughing. Warehouse 6 was one of the 6 locations he'd acquired when he bought the struggling logistics chain 8 years ago. After years of rebuilding it, business was finally stable. But lately, complaints about missed shipments, low morale, and staff turnover had started circling around this particular warehouse. The district manager's report blamed lazy hires and entitled workers, but something about it didn't sit right with Yusuf. He didn't trust filtered reports anymore. He needed to see it for himself. So 2 days later, Yusuf shaved his beard, dyed his peppered hair jet black, and put on a fake pair of wire-rimmed glasses. He wore a cheap reflective vest, steel-toe boots, and a name tag that read Tyler. Nobody at Warehouse 6 had ever met him personally.
It was a corporate chain now.
Most just knew the name of the company and the rumors that some rich guy had bought it years ago. He showed up at 5:45 a.m., 15 minutes before the shift started. The warehouse smelled like oil and cardboard. A few workers gathered near the clock-in station, sipping gas station coffee. No one looked twice at him. "You the new guy?" A tall man with thinning blonde hair and a clipboard stepped over. His badge read, Manager Craig.
Yeah.
Tyler.
Feeney.
No time for chit-chat. We're already down 2 loaders. You'll shadow Brandon. He's over their green hoodie.
Keep up.
And don't slow us down. Craig walked off, not waiting for response. Yusuf made his way to Brandon, a stocky guy in his late 30s with tired eyes and sleeves pushed up.
Hey, I'm Tyler.
I'm supposed to follow you. Brandon gave a quick nod. All right. Grab a scanner and gloves. You ever used a pallet jack? Once or twice, Yusuf lied. Then don't break anything, Brandon said, but his tone wasn't rude. Just exhausted. For the next 4 hours, Yusuf tried to keep pace. Brandon barely took pauses. They loaded pallets, scanned boxes, wrapped crates, and hauled them to the outbound dock. Yusuf noticed Brandon didn't stop to check his phone. He didn't complain once. He even helped Yusuf fix a jammed lift without saying a word. But something else caught Yusuf's attention. Every time Brandon passed by a group of younger guys, 3 of them, they'd mutter under their breath. There goes Daddy Daycare, one of them said as Brandon walked by. Don't trip, Brandon. Wouldn't want to twist that weak ankle again, another sneered. Brandon didn't react. He just kept moving. During a short break, Yusuf sat beside him on a crate. You good, man? Seemed like they were messing with you. Brandon shrugged. They're just kids. I ain't got time for that. You always work this hard? Brandon cracked a tired smile.
Yeah.
Got a son. Middle schooler. Just me and him. Can't afford to slack. Yusuf nodded slowly, watching as Brandon took a tiny sandwich from his lunchbox. You don't eat more? Brandon shook his head. Nah. I pack light. Food prices are up, you know how it is. The moment was cut short when Craig shouted from across the floor. Brandon, quit yappin' and finish Zone C. Yusuf flinched. Brandon just stood up and got moving again. The day went on. Near the end of the shift, the teasing got bolder. At one point, one of the younger guys, tall, buzz-cut, name tag said Trey, tossed a packing slip at Brandon.
Hey.
You missed this. Oh wait, maybe Daddy forgot how to read. Brandon picked it up and said nothing. But Yusuf had had enough. Later, in the break room, Yusuf sat by himself, pretending to scroll through his phone. He overheard Trey and the others laughing near the vending machine. Dude's pathetic. Always talking about his kid like it's a badge of honor.
Yeah.
Probably fakes being tired just to get pity hours. Single dads shouldn't even be doing this. Should have stayed home and collected government checks. Yusuf's jaw clenched. He stood up and walked out before he lost his temper. That night, he sat in his hotel room, the disguise still half on, thinking. He'd seen hard workers before. But Brandon? Brandon was different. A man doing everything right and still being treated like dirt. And Craig. Letting it all happen. Yusuf rubbed his temples, unsure what hit him harder, the anger or the guilt that he hadn't seen this sooner. Tomorrow he was going back in. And this time, he wasn't just watching. The next morning, Yusuf was back on the warehouse floor before sunrise. The air inside was colder, and the lighting overhead flickered slightly as the crew filtered in. He stood near the lockers, lacing his boots slowly, watching Craig bark instructions without looking at anyone longer than a second. Brandon zoned. Trey, you've got packaging prep. Keep it tight today. No delays. We're already behind by 2 trucks from yesterday. Yusuf noticed Brandon nod silently and head off toward the back. Trey, meanwhile, leaned against a rolling cart, tapping one foot, not moving until Craig had turned his back. As the shift began, Yusuf stayed close to Brandon again, this time helping with the heavier load of outbound boxes. His muscles were aching from the previous day, but he kept pace. Brandon worked in a focused rhythm, scanning barcodes, checking labels, and loading carts without pause. As they moved a loaded pallet toward the outbound dock, Brandon glanced sideways. You ever worked a place like this before? Something close, Yusuf said. Not like this, though. Brandon grunted. Yeah, most don't last long here. Burnout or blow-ups. Either way, folks disappear. They reached the dock and began securing straps. Yusuf lowered his voice. Why do you think that is? Brandon tightened the last strap and straightened. You've seen how it runs here. Some folks get pushed hard. Others coast. Management don't care who's pulling weight, as long as someone's moving boxes. Before Yusuf could respond, a loud crash echoed from the other side of the warehouse. A stack of trays had toppled over, scattering shrink wrap and labels across the floor. Craig's voice followed immediately. What the hell happened now? Yusuf and Brandon jogged over. Trey was standing beside the mess, arms crossed. Another worker, a younger woman with short curls and a nervous expression, stood nearby holding a faulty tape gun. She dropped the whole rack, Trey said before anyone asked. Didn't secure it. I didn't drop anything, the woman snapped. The wheel on the cart locked and it tipped. Craig walked up, surveying the mess. You two clean this up. And you, he pointed at the woman, lose the attitude. I don't care whose fault it is, just fix it. Brandon leaned toward Yusuf as they walked away. That's Maya.
Just started last week.
She's sharp, but Trey's been riding her since day one. Yusuf narrowed his eyes. Craig always talked to people like that. Brandon nodded once. Unless you're Trey. They returned to their work, but the tension lingered. Yusuf kept watching. Trey spent most of the morning wandering between stations, chatting, occasionally scanning 1 or 2 boxes, and then walking off again. He made sure to be visible whenever Craig passed by, always holding something or pointing at a clipboard. But when Craig wasn't looking, he was nowhere near his assigned area. By noon, tempers were fraying. The shipment timing board showed 3 delayed outbound pallets and 1 partially filled truck. Brandon had been running nonstop since 6 in the morning, and his sleeve was soaked with sweat as he pulled another double-wrapped cart across the floor. Yusuf offered to take the next one solo. You're limping. I'm good, Brandon said stiffly. It just acts up when it's cold. You're not. Sit a second. I'll haul this. Brandon hesitated, then stepped aside and leaned against the shelving unit. Yusuf pushed the cart down the narrow aisle, weaving past forklifts and crates. As he turned the corner, he nearly collided with Trey, who was sitting on a stack of shrink wrap rolls, phone in hand. You lost, old man? Trey asked without moving. Yusuf parked the cart against the dock stop and turned back. You on break? Trey didn't look up. I don't answer to you. Yusuf didn't respond. He walked back to Brandon, who was now talking quietly with Maya near the packaging station. She didn't deserve that earlier, Brandon was saying. I know, Maya replied. I don't get why he's got it out for me. Brandon glanced over his shoulder. You're not the only one. Yusuf approached, setting down a roll of tape. You okay? Maya nodded, but her jaw was clenched. I've worked warehouses before. Never had to deal with stuff like this. I asked Craig for help yesterday. He told me to figure it out like the men do. Yusuf's hands froze over the tape roll. Brandon caught his eye. You see why folks quit? Yusuf nodded slowly.
Yeah.
I'm seeing it. After lunch, another truck arrived late. The dock team scrambled to load it before the driver's timer ran out. Brandon pushed himself harder than ever, limping more visibly now but refusing to stop. Maya took on a double packaging load to make up for a missing worker, and Yusuf tried to balance between helping them both. Meanwhile, Trey meandered between boxes, giving orders he didn't follow himself. At one point, Maya asked him to help move a crate off the line. He laughed. You want me to do your job now? I'm packaging lead. Not your personal forklift. Yusuf stepped in. Then maybe act like a lead. Trey turned. You got something to say? Just surprised a lead doesn't know how to lift. Trey stepped forward, but Craig's voice cut in from behind them. What's the holdup? Yusuf turned to face him. You should ask Trey. He's been on break since sunrise. Craig walked up, arms crossed. You don't run this place, Tyler. No, Yusuf said, pulling off his glasses. But I do own it. The room froze. Brandon's eyes widened. Maya blinked. Trey's mouth dropped open, but no words came out. Craig frowned. What kind of joke? Yusuf reached into his vest and pulled out his ID. His real one. Yusuf Harlan. Founder.
Owner.
The guy who signs your paycheck. Silence stretched like tension wire. No one moved. Yusuf turned to Trey. You've spent 2 days mocking your coworkers, avoiding your responsibilities, and creating a hostile environment. You're done here. Effective immediately. Trey stammered. You can't just, I can. And I am. You're lucky I don't report your behavior to HR for formal review. But you're out. Now. He turned to Craig. As for you, you've ignored reports, allowed toxic behavior, and shown clear bias in how you manage your team. That ends now. Pack your office. Security will escort you out. Craig's face went pale. This is a misunderstanding. I've seen enough to know it's not. Yusuf looked at Brandon, then Maya. You two meet me in the office after your shift. We need to talk about what comes next and what's going to change. He turned to the rest of the workers now gathered at the edge of the aisle. This warehouse isn't just a building. It's people. Good people. And from now on, it's going to be run with respect. If anyone has a problem with that, now's the time to speak. No one said a word. Craig stormed out. Trey followed, silent, his batch clattering to the floor as he passed the clock-out station. Yusuf took a breath. The warehouse was still. But for the first time since he arrived, it felt like it might finally be moving in the right direction. By the time Yusuf stepped into the warehouse's cramped upstairs office, the fluorescent lights overhead buzzed with a low hum. The space was barely 10 feet wide, with a desk that looked like it hadn't been cleaned in months, and a filing cabinet with one drawer permanently stuck open. He pulled off his vest and let it hang on the back of the chair. His hands were still sore from the shift, but his mind was sharper than it had been in weeks. There was a soft knock at the door. Yusuf stood up. Brandon stepped in first, his movements careful, as if unsure what he was walking into. Maya followed, arms crossed, her expression guarded but steady. Yusuf gestured to the 2 chairs across from him.
Seat.
Please. They did, exchanging a brief glance as they settled into the worn plastic seats. I appreciate you both coming, Yusuf said. I know today was unexpected, but I want to be clear what happened wasn't a stunt. I came here because for too long I was relying on reports that didn't match what I was hearing from the ground. Brandon kept his eyes on the desk. Wasn't expecting to be talking to the guy who owns the place. I didn't expect to be watching you carry half a warehouse on your back, Yusuf replied. But here we are. Maya leaned forward slightly. Are we getting fired? Yusuf shook his head.
No.
Quite the opposite. But I do need your honesty. He looked between them. Start from the beginning. The real version. Not what Craig would have sent up the chain. Brandon hesitated, then finally spoke. Things started shifting about 6 months ago. We lost 2 senior loaders, good guys. One moved out of state, the other got tired of the hours. Craig didn't replace them. Said we'd tighten up and work smarter. But all that meant was we picked up the slack. Why didn't anyone report that to upper management? Yusuf asked. Brandon let out a slow breath. We tried. HR said they'd monitor the situation. But nothing changed. After a while, people just stopped trying. Maya cut in. He played favorites. If you didn't push back, and if you looked the way he wanted you to look, you got away with everything. Trey was his golden boy. I saw him skip whole tasks and clock out early, without penalty. Meanwhile, I asked for a second set of gloves last week and got told to be less picky. Yusuf's jaw tightened. Why didn't you come to corporate? I was on week 2, Maya said. Didn't want to be the problem hire. Brandon nodded. And most of us figured it wouldn't matter. Craig knew how to talk in those emails. Clean numbers. Good projections. He was careful with what he documented. But on the floor, it was his kingdom. Yusuf leaned back, absorbing the weight of it. I want you both to know this isn't going back to how it was. Starting tomorrow, I'm assigning a temporary operations lead to stabilize the floor. We'll bring in someone from the main office who's got a reputation for getting teams back on track without playing politics. He looked at Brandon. I want you to be part of that rebuild. Floor-led. Not just for the title, but because people follow your pace. You've got the respect. And you've earned more than just survival. Brandon stared at him. I didn't ask for a promotion. I know. That's why you're the right one for it. And what happens when someone else higher up decides to cut hours again, or bring in another Craig? They won't, Yusuf said. Because I'm not stepping away again. I've already scheduled monthly walkthroughs. Different warehouses. Random times. No more buffer layers. Maya tapped her fingers against her armrest. I want to stay. But I need to know if this place is going to be safe. It will be, Yusuf said. Starting with a zero-tolerance policy for harassment and favoritism. That wasn't just a performance out there. Trey and Craig cross lines that don't get overlooked. No one else is getting that kind of pass again. She nodded once. Then I'll stay. Brandon looked over at her, then back at Yusuf. You serious about all this? Dead serious. I'll do it, Brandon said. But I'm not turning into someone who just talks and fills out forms. If I'm lead, I'm still pulling loads. You lead how you want, Yusuf said. Just don't forget to take care of yourself while you're doing it. They stood.
No handskaks.
Just a quiet mutual understanding. Later that evening, Yusuf walked the warehouse floor alone. The last outbound had just rolled out. The place was quieter now, the echo of bootsteps bouncing off metal racks. He passed by the break room. Empty coffee cups lined the counter. A torn flyer about overtime sign-ups hung by a single pushbin. He pulled it down and tossed it in the trash. The next morning, a corporate operations consultant named Nadira arrived before dawn. She'd worked in Yusuf's chain for over a decade, known for her no-nonsense approach and ability to fix broken teams without breaking people. She didn't introduce herself with a speech. She just grabbed a clipboard, walked the floor, and started asking direct questions. Within hours, she'd reorganized task assignments and positioned Brandon as the point person for coordination. Maya was reassigned to incoming inventory, a job that required precision and speed, 2 skills she had in spades. By midweek, the loading schedule was already smoother. Workers who had been quiet started speaking up. A veteran named Luis, who hadn't taken a full break in over a year, finally sat down and ate a proper lunch. A young guy named Jeremy, previously always late, started showing up early when he saw that effort was being recognized. Yusuf didn't hover, but he didn't disappear either. He came back on the third day, in plain clothes, no disguise. He watched from the mezzanine, clipboard in hand, but didn't interrupt. He saw Brandon guiding a new hire through the strap system, patient but firm. Maya stood by the inventory station, clipboard in hand, catching a mislabel before it caused a delay. Nadira was in the back, talking to a forklift operator who'd nearly quit last month. No one was loafing. No one was being barked at either. Yusuf turned to leave. On his way out, he passed the clock-in station. Brandon caught up to him just outside. You heading out?
Yeah.
Letting Nadira run things for now. She's got it. Brandon glanced back toward the warehouse. Feels different. It is different. You think it'll last? Only if people like you keep holding the line. Brandon nodded slowly. Guess I'll need a better lunchbox. Yusuf smiled. You will. And your kid's going to be proud when he hears what you're doing now. Brandon took a long breath. He already was. I just didn't want to disappoint him. You didn't. Brandon shook his head slightly, then walked back inside. Yusuf stood for a moment longer, then got into his car. He didn't turn the engine on right away. Just sat there, listening to the faint sound of pallets clanking in the distance. For the first time in too long, it sounded like progress. By the end of the first full week under new oversight, Warehouse 6 was still running hot, but it wasn't unraveling. The pace remained intense. Staffing was still lean. But for the first time in months, the pressure felt shared, not dumped onto the shoulders of a few. Yusuf returned quietly late Friday afternoon, parking in the far end of the lot. He didn't announce himself. He walked past the loading docks, staying behind the yellow lines, watching. The floor was buzzing. Forklifts moved in sync. Pallet jacks glided between zones without bottlenecks. Brandon stood near the outbound staging area, checking off a clipboard while giving quick instructions to two newer hires. One of them, a wiry kid in a faded hoodie, nodded and jogged to the back to grab a dolly. No one was shouting. No one was dragging their feet either. Inside the break room, Yusuf found Nadira finishing a brief with the mid-shift team leaders. They were seated around a folding table, each with a printed task sheet in front of them. She was walking them through a new handoff protocol for shift changes, something Yusuf knew had always been a weak point across locations. When she spotted him at the doorway, she didn't pause. Wrap it up in 5, folks, she said. Then back to stations. Brandon, I'll meet you by the whiteboard in 10. As the others filed out, Nadira stayed behind, pulling the door shut halfway. Not bad for 7 days, she said. Yusuf leaned against the wall. Looks better than I expected. It's still rough, she said. The staffing shortage is real. I'm holding back overtime until we get approval, so they're running tight. But no one's coasting. That's something. He nodded. What's the biggest hole? Training gaps. Too much tribal knowledge, not enough documentation. And morale's still fragile. They trust Brandon, but they're waiting to see if this sticks. It will, Yusuf said. I'm not handing this place back to anyone I don't fully trust. She raised an eyebrow. You have someone in mind?
I do, he said.
But I want to talk to Brandon about it first. He found Brandon near the break bay, made conversation with Maya and Luis. They were reviewing a new label scanner mounted on the packaging line. Maya nodded, gave a quick thumbs up, and peeled off toward inventory. Luis followed a moment later, leaving Brandon adjusting the scanner's bracket. Yusuf stepped in beside him. Didn't expect you back today, Brandon said without turning. Didn't expect to see you running tech checks. Scanner was misaligned. Labels were printing a half-inch off. Yusuf waited until Brandon straightened. I want you to take the operations supervisor role here. Brandon hesitated. That's Craig's old title. Title doesn't mean it has to come with his habits. Brandon crossed his arms. I'm not a clipboard guy. I know the floor, I don't know the office side. You'll learn. And you won't be stuck behind a desk. Nadira's building a hybrid model. We want supervisors who stay grounded. Brandon didn't answer right away. He looked out toward the staging area where a truck was backing into Dock 3. The crew there was already rolling pallets into position. What happens when the next crisis hits? He asked. Another round of cuts? Another manager that smooth talks the top and steamrolls everyone else below? Yusuf kept his voice level. I've already started restructuring how performance is measured. It's not just about output anymore, it's about team stability, retention, and safety compliance. Those numbers will weigh more than rush rates. Brandon narrowed his eyes. And if someone tries to override that, they won't, because they'll be reporting directly to me. A long silence passed. Brandon finally gave a short nod. Then I'll do it. But I want to keep training new hires directly. No middle layers. Done. And I want Maya to lead inventory. She's caught more inbound errors this week than the last 3 months combined. She's already on my list, Yusuf said. That scanner? Her suggestion. Brandon allowed a hint of a grin. She's sharp. Doesn't miss much. Yusuf turned toward the dock. Neither do you. That evening, Yusuf held a full shift meeting, first time in over a year that every crew member had been invited into one space. They gathered in the loading zone, standing in a half circle around a makeshift podium made from a stack of sealed cartons. Yusuf stood in front of them, flanked by Nadira and Brandon. I want to start by saying thank you, he said, voice even. Not for perfection, but for showing up, for staying when you didn't have to, and for giving this place one more shot. No one spoke. But no one looked away either. I made a mistake stepping too far back. I trusted reports and missed the reality. That ends now. He paused, letting the silence settle. You deserve better. You're going to get it. He looked directly at Maya. Effective Monday, Maya will lead inbound and inventory operations. That includes training, quality checks, and supplier discrepancy reports. Maya blinked. Wait, you're serious? Completely. A few heads turned toward her. She stood straighter. Brandon will step up as operations supervisor. He'll work with Nadira for the next 30 days to build a sustainable model. After that, she'll rotate out. He stays. A low murmur rolled through the group, this time not of protest, but surprise. Yusuf continued. We're hiring 2 more full-time loaders starting next week. And for anyone here more than 6 months, we're rolling out a retention bonus program tied to safety and attendance. Details will follow, but it's real. Luis raised a hand. What about the harassment stuff? We never heard anything official. Yusuf nodded. From today forward, this is a zero-tolerance site. Discrimination, bullying, intimidation, none of it gets a second chance. You see it, you report it. And we deal with it. He let that hang in the air. Last thing. I'm not going back behind a desk. I'll be rotating through different sites every month. Sometimes I'll check informally. Sometimes I'll just show up. But I'll be watching. He stepped back. The group stood still for a few seconds, then slowly began to disperse. Some clapped. Others just nodded. But no one looked skeptical anymore. Later that night, while workers cleaned up for final shift closeout, Brandon walked the perimeter with a clipboard in hand. He stopped beside Maya at the inventory station. You good with this? He asked. She glanced at the scanner.
Yeah.
This feels right. You ready to run your own team? She raised an eyebrow. You ready to run the whole floor? He chuckled. Guess we'll both find out Monday. She turned back to the scanner. I think we'll be fine. Outside, Yusuf stood by his car, watching the dock doors close one by one. The final truck rolled out, taillights glowing faintly in the dark. He didn't feel triumphant. Just steady. Focused. This wasn't a fix-all. There would still be hard days. Broken pallets. Late shipments. Frayed tempers. But now there was a foundation. Built not on slogans or spreadsheets, but on people who'd earned their voice. He got in the car and drove away without fanfare. The warehouse lights faded behind him, but the work inside kept going. And this time it was being done right.